Breakfast and brilliant ideas, coffee and conversation, we're serving up that and much more at IBJ Media's events. Join us at an upcoming event and kickstart your day with fresh ideas and new connections. Check out our event lineup and register now at ibj.com/RSVP.
This is Inside Indiana Business Radio for the afternoon of Thursday, September 18th, 2025. I'm Alex Brown. NearSpace Education, the nonprofit arm of Upland-based NearSpace Launch, recently unveiled a new makerspace and education center that's nearly 10 times the size of its previous space. Jen Spencer with NearSpace says the goal is to help launch students' interest in STEM.
It's not really just opening doors for students. It's just creating new doors, new pathways for students that didn't exist. I'm from Grant County, and nothing like this existed when I was in high school or junior high. And we're seeing a lot of girls attend our camps and clubs, so we're really excited about that.
The makerspace features a soldering station, tool room with 3D printers and other machines, and a multi-purpose room that can be used for events and conferences. Kids Discovery Factory, a nonprofit children's museum in Batesville, has announced plans for a $5 million construction and renovation project. The expansion, set for completion next year, will add about 5 times the amount of space that the museum currently has. The Indiana National Guard this week announced a new leader for the 38th Infantry Division based in Indianapolis. Brigadier General Joe Gardner succeeds Major General Dan Dengelo, who has commanded the division since January 2023. From the number one source for Indiana business news, this is Inside Indiana Business Radio.
Thanks for listening to this IBJ Media podcast. You're probably going to remember this ad. Do you know why? Podcast advertising works. 85% of listeners recalled hearing an ad during a podcast, and 70% of podcast listeners have acted after hearing an ad. So whether you're looking to be heard across the entire IBJ Media podcast network, sponsor one of our shows, or just start with a 30-second ad, IBJ Media can help. Contact advertise at ibj.com to learn more.
Lawmakers who voted to implement work requirements for Medicaid beneficiaries next summer will have to wait another 6 months before they can take effect. IIB's Mark Mazurek has more.
More than 650,000 Hoosiers are enrolled on the Healthy Indiana Plan, or HIP, as of August. State lawmakers voted earlier this year to impose work requirements on the low to moderate income Hoosiers starting in July, though many are already working and others may qualify for exceptions such as child care commitments or substance use treatment. But the federal government won't let Indiana move forward with work requirements until 2027, when all Medicaid expansion enrollees must meet their condition as part of President Donald Trump's Big Beautiful Bill, which was signed into law this summer. Other parts of Indiana's HIP 3.0 proposal are still under consideration, including an expansion on provider taxes, cost-sharing requirements, and wellness incentives. Overall, Medicaid is Indiana's fastest-growing expense, increasing from $2.1 billion in 2017 to nearly $5 billion in 2027. Part of those increases can be attributed to applied behavior analysis therapy and pathways attendant care costs. Additionally, expenses for federally qualified health centers grew during that time, going from $300 million in 2021 to $500 million this year. I'm Mark Mazurek for Inside Indiana Business Radio.
Columbus-based Cummins and Tokyo-based industrial equipment maker Komatsu have announced a new collaboration to develop hybrid powertrains for mining trucks. Cummins says the retrofit kits are expected to save money while reducing carbon emissions. Earlier this year, Cummins acquired many of the assets of First Mode, a Seattle-based developer of hydrogen-powered mining equipment, an acquisition that is expected to hasten the pace of development so that pilot retrofit units can be deployed later this year. First Mode General Manager Molly Puga said Cummins expects to deliver hybrid products at scale well before 2030. Language buried in a COVID-19 stimulus relief bill passed in President Donald Trump's first term is costing Indiana's safety net hospitals over $100 million per year in lost federal reimbursement payments. But a new bill being carried by U.S. Senator Jim Banks seeks to revert the changes and restore some of the lost Medicare disproportionate share hospital funding to health systems which serve high percentages of Medicaid and Medicare patients. Eric Fish is CEO of Schneck Medical Center in Seymour.
When you start changing that funding mechanism, that starts impacting the care that Hoosiers get, especially in rural areas where when you look at rural hospitals across the state in Indiana, a number of rural hospitals are struggling. So when you start cutting that funding and you see these things happen and other legislative actions that are occurring, as a physician, it's going to impact access.
A change made to the funding formula in 2023 meant care for almost 13% of Indiana's 1.8 million Medicaid enrollees is no longer counted for in the DSH formula. The new bill would revert the formula back to count patients that are covered by both Medicare and Medicaid. Indiana fever legend Tamika Catchings is this week's guest on the Business and Beyond podcast with Gary Dick, presented by PNC, a weekly conversation with high-profile Hoosiers in business, sports, and entertainment, and beyond. Available now on the IBJ Media app or your favorite podcast provider. I'm Alex Brown for Inside Indiana Business Radio on Demand.
Whether it's healthcare innovation, major infrastructure, or global sports impact, Inside Indiana Business with Gary Dick tells the stories of Indiana's groundbreakers and game changers. It's the must-listen show for business, civic, and community leaders across the state. Subscribe and listen wherever you get your podcasts or at ibjpodcast.com.
Thanks for listening to this IBJ Media podcast. You're probably going to remember this ad. Do you know why? Podcast advertising works. 85% of listeners recalled hearing an ad during a podcast, and 70% of podcast listeners have acted after hearing an ad. So whether you're looking to be heard across the entire IBJ Media Podcast Network, sponsor one of our shows, or just start with a 30-second ad, IBJ Media can help. Contact advertise at ibj.com to learn more.